There's a full moon in the sky. Fog drifts down from the moors. Bats flit overhead. And there's a distant, unearthly howl. The creak of the rusty iron gate tells us that Hohestor Cemetery is open for business. Yes, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're finishing up our graveyard build. Hi, I'm Rob Poynton. Thanks for joining me today on Dragon's Teeth, where, yes, the graveyard build finally comes to an end, or at least as much of an end as I'm going to make. It's a little bit like they say with a music mix, it's never finished, it's just surrendered. Same goes with writing a book or anything else. It's always easy to go back and think, oh, tinker with this, tinker with that. However, I do have to remind myself that this is not a diorama, this is a gaming board, so although I want it to look reasonably good, playability is also key. As it is, I've already packed quite a lot of stuff in, as you've seen if you would have been following the channel. Anyway, there were still a few other things to put in, a few finishing touches, so we'll have a look at those first. Now, it is quite timely that I've finished now, because we do have a date for the first ever test play of my We Want the Gold Fantasy Skirmish game, for which, of course, the cemetery will be the board. Oh, let's talk about the name as well. So, yes, I've decided on the name Hohestor, Hohestor, Hohestor Cemetery. Now, the first person to write in with a comment below explaining the name and why I've chosen that, the first one to do that correctly, I'll send you a free PDF of the game rules once they're finished. So, yes, we've got a game lined up in, I think it's 3 Mondays' time, down at Bedford Gladiators. Got a group of 5 players together. They're each going to have a faction, and all the factions are going to be coming together in the cemetery with, each has a various task, or maybe tasks that they're there for. And of course, some of those tasks may align, and some of them definitely won't. Having that date now has been a real good spur to me to get the project finished, because you know what it's like. I don't know if you're the same with things. Starting projects is the easiest thing in the world. Actually seeing them through to completion is, I've got my Napoleonic naval ships down there still that have not been out of the box for, it's probably a year, to be honest, and they're nearly done as well. It always seems to be that last sort of 15-10% that's the hardest to finish. Anyway, that's my next project once we get this out of the way. So yes, the graveyard's finished. I added in some extra little details, as I said. So what I'll do, I'll run through those now. And at the end of that, we're going to finish with a tour of the cemetery, you might say. A kind of drone's eye view, and also a ground level view of some of the things that the players, may possibly be bumping into in a few weeks' time. I hope you've enjoyed the build. It's taken a little while, but these things always do. No point in rushing things. I do have one thing to finish as well. I've got to spray everything with probably at least 2 sprays of varnish. I'm just waiting for the weather, really. It's been very cold and a bit cloudy as well at the moment. So once the weather turns, I'll get those boards sprayed up as well. But anyway, here's the final details, all those little additions. Please do send me in all your questions and suggestions. Always like hearing from viewers. And if you haven't already, please do click the like button, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel. Okay, let's have a look at those finishing touches. So the first thing we're going for is some rust using the wonderfully named Tensochrome rust acrylic. A very old paint, I've had that for years, and basically it's dabbing that onto the gates and onto the metal fences. Then there were some other odd bits and pieces scattered around the cemetery, such as shovels. These came with the grave pieces that I bought from Etsy, so it was just painting those up. A couple of other things that came with those were items like this: a cross with some pumpkins on the base. So very Halloween. So it was getting the crosses painted up and then getting the orange paint out, quite a rare one to use, to do those pumpkins as well. Some of those grave pieces also needed a little bit of dry brushing just to finish those off. And I like these pieces. I mean, I could have made them easily enough, I guess, with my clay, but for the price they were, it's quicker to buy them and paint them up, and I think they look really good. There were also a number of what we might call Napoleon items that came via Etsy as well. By Napoleon items, I mean bony parts, of course. So we have this lovely skeleton tied to a post. So just dry brushing that with some off-white. And we've got a mound of skulls as well, so same procedure for them. I dry brush these with off-white, then later on I gave them a wash of that green wash that I made to give them a slightly mouldy appearance. This is the wash. I made it exactly the same as the brown wash, but obviously with green acrylic paint. And I thought I'd try giving the trees a coat of this as well. And I think that worked really well. Everyone thinks brown for trees, but actually when you look at tree trunks, there's quite a lot of green in there. And again, it gives everything this slightly mouldy, decayed look as well. Now, I have to confess, despite saying I wasn't going to do any more shopping for figures, I did see a couple of figures when I was out the other day, including this pair of Hobbit thieves. These are going to be part of the Sneaky Finders faction. And also 2 additions to the Vampire Hunter force as well. So we have this fearsome figure here. And this is probably going to be Professor Van Halen, the head of the Vampire Hunters. And of course, if we're hunting for vampires, we need a vampire. So this is Count Ramstein. Now he may be appearing in the Graveyard game, or he may not. We'll keep that as a bit of a surprise. But I thought that was a really striking figure. This one I saw on Amazon and put it on my Christmas list. So this was one of my Christmas presents. Very festive. And I thought I'd just add in some other graveyard denizens as well. So I got these lovely crows. If you have a pair of crows, is that an attempted murder? I don't know. Anyway, really nice figures. So I'll be dotting these about the place. And of course, how could we forget rats? We've got to have rats as well. There's a great story by Henry Kuttner called Graveyard Rats that I'd highly recommend if you like weird fiction. We covered it on the Innsmouth Book Club quite a while back now. Excellent story. So yeah, that prompted me to get these wonderful rats as well. And the crows are very easy to paint, just a black undercoat, and then I went over the beaks and the legs and claws in a dark grey. The rats got a brown or grey undercoat, and then I just added some highlighting on top for those. And you may remember that I did have some bats as well. So I suppose painting those, they're like a cross between a crow and a rat, really. So they get black and brown, again with some highlights. From there it was a case of positioning these critters around the graveyard. So I put the individual rats in various places, a daub of glue, and then just push them into place. One by the skulls, one in that awaiting plot. That's what we call a plot development, I think. Another one in one of the mausoleums. These are all the individual rats, because the group rats I'm going to use as potential adversaries. There we've got one of the crows going on the gravestone. Are they crows or ravens? I don't know. I'm not sure what the difference is, to be honest. And there's one more going in next to that skull. Alas, poor Yorick, quoth the raven. Another one up on the roof of a mausoleum. And of course, where else does a bat go but in a bell tower? This proved a little bit tricky, actually. I had to have a few goes at this. Next time, I'd add the bat in before I assembled the actual tower. But yeah, he looks good there, just hanging around. There was just one other thing I wanted to add in, and that was some cobwebs. Now, I had some spider webs that I got from a Halloween shop ages ago. Could I find them? No, couldn't find them anywhere. Not even in my Halloween box. Yes, of course I have a Halloween box. So I used some cotton wool that I had instead, teased out, put some glue on the building, and then add the cotton wool on. Quite a messy process, but I found if I did it in layers, then it started to build up a nice effect. I would advise maybe using cocktail sticks or something, might be a little bit easier. I did find if I applied glue onto the actual cotton wool itself once it was in place, then it became a lot more malleable, a lot easier to work with and thin out. So then the effect started looking really cobwebby. And that method worked really well for spreading the webs over some of the gravestones and the obelisks and such like. So there we go, that's all the extra little bits and pieces added in. Let's have the grand tour now.